Welcome. Not too sure if anybody's here yet. It's a little early, but I do see a few people already logged in. And my name is Zeke Hersh, and I am the regional general manager for Trouts Fly Fishing. And hi, Ben. How you doing? And outfitting manager, and have been their head float guide for 5 or 6 years, and a float guide for 20 some. So I think people are going to start logging in, and we'll start talking about float fishing. It's a little bit new to me, so throw your questions out. I'm sure you're going to be asking a ton. Chapel Outdoors, how's it going, man? Good to see you here. Thanks for coming. And just shoot those questions out. I floated last week before everything got crazy, and it fished quite well. By all means, there's some good floating right now. Looks like the Colorado's pretty much good to go from all the way down from Pump House all the way down to Rifle. So phenomenal fishing if you can get out there. You know, one of the things that is always an issue right now is driving with other people or having shuttles run. And by all means, a couple different cars, you can do that. Also in the decent weather days, using a bike to do some shuttling. So you can kind of keep yourself contained in your own group and not have to pay for a shuttle or whatnot. So there's some pretty good options out there. I've definitely done quite a few bike shuttles in the past where there's short sections. Again, been float fishing for quite a while, and really love this river. Colorado is one of my favorite rivers in the state, if not my favorite river in the state. Tons of things, tons of different options and sections. I think we have about 107, let's see where I say on my presentation. It's a little over 100 miles of trout fishing floatable water. I'm getting blown up from different levels here, guys. So I got a phone call. Calls are forwarded to me right now up in Frisco. This is our Frisco office, the upstairs office. We got the retail store downstairs. That, of course, is shut down. Been shut down for a little over a week now. But we are doing phone orders. So if you're going floating and you need to get some flies, I can definitely help you out there. Just give me a call, 970-668-2583. That's the shop number, but it's forwarded to my cell phone right now. And we can get you some flies, and we'll talk about flies later in this presentation here today too. So lots of good stuff on the Colorado to fish, especially this time of year. I fished last week, Newcastle Silt, caught some nice fish. It wasn't the easiest day for everybody, but we probably put about 15 in the boat. So super good day. Had a lot of fun, and all the fish were subsurface on nymphs, but consistently caught fish on 3 different nymphs subsurface, and everything from a big Pat's rubber leg and anywhere from dark colors to light colors. And then it's called a KGB, kind of a pheasant tail, flashback pheasant tail. That's a black and blue version, and fish is one of my favorite flies. Just very durable, sinks real fast, little silver bead on there, a little blue flashback on there, and just fish is real good. Can look like a lot of different things. And then we're also getting fish on midges. Didn't really we did throw streamers briefly and got a couple bumps late in the day. It's a real small streamer. Actually, the fellow who was fishing out of the back of the boat grabbed what he thought was a ready to go streamer in the boat, and it actually had a broken hook off on it. So he said, I was getting bumps, so he's getting eats, but no hook on there. So because when I picked up the fly, I was like, oh, there's no hook. So kind of funny. Let me know what you want to cover. Otherwise, we'll start talking about it. You got the map back here. It's not real easy to see, and maybe I'll take it down and we can zoom in on some stuff. Go over my pack here. So typically, what people are floating is essentially from below Gore Canyon, Pump House, all the way down to State Bridge. That's the most popular area, and by all means, it is still good fishing. At this time of year, you can definitely get in there and have some good access and good fishing The water's still a little bit cold. Fish aren't moving as much as lower down, but it is very good. And lots of fish in there. One of my favorite stretches is Radium to Rancho Del Rio. It's about 6 miles. The thing is, if the wind blows, it's pretty burly, but it has some slower water in there and offers some really good sections with some larger fish, all kinds of fishing in there, everything from dry fly fishing, streamer fishing to nymphing. Pump House to Radium, of course, is one of the most popular, and it's good. It's definitely above the canyon. It's a good section. And once you get into the canyon, any of these canyons, something to note, you know that ice is going to still be on the sides of the river. Think about there. And then Rancho to State Bridge is also a good stretch. A little faster moving, not so much canyon. And then you also get the Piney River coming in. This time of year, the rainbows start looking to go up in some of those tributaries. So by all means, don't mess with them if they're on reds and whatnot, but you can find staging fish in these tributaries. And then below here, we get the State Bridge to Dotsero sections. One of my favorite sections to fish and float. So like State Bridge to two bridges is a great stretch. It's about 4 or 5 miles, real easy. It's all basically paved the whole way. This time of year it can fish quite good, although that upper section is pocket water and fast and canyony. And then 2 bridges to Catamount Bridge. So State Bridge to 2 bridges, actually, that short little section. And then 2 bridges to Catamount Bridge. It's a longer section, about 10 miles. Slower water, can slow down, and it's also a really good section for early season. Catamount to Burns, that section this time of year, I would say it's possibly fishable, but because it's in a canyon, that could hold some of the last ice on the river this time of year. So you might want to stay off that. And then from Burns, you're gonna it's Derby Junction. Burns, there used to be a takeout there, but that's not there anymore. And then you're gonna go down to from Derby Junction, actually. Now, the one other thing too is you have to do Rodeo Rapid, and they're considering this a class 3, and it is a 3. And in a drift boat, it's probably a little bigger than a 3. So it's definitely got consequences. So watch out for that rapid, especially at lower levels. It gets real technical, and then at higher levels, it's also can be technical. A lot of hidden stuff under there. And then you got Derby to Pinball, and that's about a 5 or 6 mile stretch. That one should be open and actually fishing pretty good. And then Pinball down to Horse Creek, also a good section, one of my favorites. But in that canyon, there's a nice red dirt canyon area that can stay iced up. And then from Horse Creek down, you got Horse Creek to Cottonwood, and then Cottonwood to Dotsero, all great sections. And actually all open and fishing good this time of year. One of my favorites is Horse Creek to Cottonwood this time of year. It's a great section. And then also, if you want to do pavement all the way and easy access, Cottonwood to Dotsero. And then we can get down to that lower stuff, which is on the back here, and a bunch of good stuff. So, but again, thanks for everybody who's joining. Please throw out some questions so I can answer anything for you. Would love to help you with your ideas for float fishing. And otherwise, I'm just kind of going off the cuff here and just talking about the river and what there is to offer this time of year. And if there's no more questions, I'll keep moving on down the river. This is what I float. I like to float this time of year and late in the season. It's not the greatest visual here, but then you got Dotsero down to Bear Ranch. Some people float that. There is not really a boat ramp there at Bear Ranch, so you're gonna have to have a raft and pull that out of there. And that's this little section right there. Slower water, getting to that canyon, not necessarily the best water in my opinion, but I definitely see people floating it from this time of year. And then as you get down the canyon, there's not really much good floating down in that canyon, just because it's either severe white water, or you got the Lowhead Dam there for Hanging Lake, or just a straight up dam actually. And then as you get to Grizzly Creek, that's your first put in, and you can do Grizzly Creek to Glenwood Springs. Two Rivers boat ramp this year is closed for the spring. And I believe you're able to take out on River Left, although that's technically a private takeout. So I know we obtained a permit through that actual outfitter, who's a rafting company, to use that boat ramp. The next boat ramp below that is South Canyon. The last I looked at South Canyon, it was closed. And that's just because that's a very steep boat ramp and not necessarily safe if there's ice on there or snow and whatnot. I do know that the BLM is basically opening our permit up as of April 1st on that South Canyon boat ramp. So I'd imagine it's going to be good to go. So that probably means it'll be that boat ramp would be good to go. And then you get down to below South Canyon, you get to Dino Lot. A lot of people are using Dinosaur Lot right now. It's probably the most popular put in right now. And they're floating either to Newcastle or all the way down to Silt. So that next put in is Newcastle. And then that last one is Silt. And then another, 10 miles, 8 or 7 miles, you get down to Rifle. And it looks like we got a couple little comments here. Thanks, Colorado Fishing Addict. Appreciate that. You getting back to me. When you say the canyon is iced up this time of year, do you mean it's iced over or effectively unfloatable? Interesting. So what I'm saying is basically just be careful. Chances are it's fine. The last comment I had from a guide who floated Pump House said there was some ice pushing out towards the middle. It was completely doable, but it makes everything a little narrower. If it gets cold again, that ice can creep out. And of course, that makes it technical to get your boat through. I've never had to do it, but I've heard of people having to pull their boat over ice jams and dams back in there. So obviously would not be fun with a drift boat, not as big a deal with a raft. So just be careful. As far as I know, all of those sections are fishing. A good note though too, this time of year with how cold it has been and that water is on the warming rise, a canyon probably is not your favorite place to fish this time of year because those fish are going to be lethargic. They're not going to be wanting to work as hard in those fast pocket water or canyon sections. So you might want to choose those slower runs anyways, or slower sections, and it'll probably fish better for you. Let's see here. Question from Ben. As far as more boats, I definitely noticed that Dinosaur Lot was being used quite a bit. That said, it was kind of before the spring break kind of shut down up here. So I know the last time I floated down there, I was talking with other guides, and it was all kind of before at least Summit County was sending people home. And these were definitely people still kind of here on spring break before they got sent home, or essentially did not have any place to stay. So a few more boats there at Dinosaur Lot. I doubt it's that busy. It's nothing. It's going to be nothing like the full season. That said, I am looking forward to being able to get that out and enjoy the river a little more, with just feeling a little more that I'm responsible and for not traveling. That said, as we're dealing with this, my idea is if you're getting outside, that's great. Just don't stop off in other communities. It's just being responsible, not bringing anything there. If you're just going there, driving your boat, dropping it in the water, gearing it up, running shuttle, however you want to do that, and getting back in your car at the end of the day, I find that should be plenty fine. Gassing up in your community, etc., or calling in a phone order for flies, etc. So we had some questions there, and I didn't quite get into the last little Newcastle to Silt. Great section, a little slower. The fish are usually quite large in that stretch, and there's a good amount of them. As you get down lower on the Colorado below Newcastle, you start running out of numbers of fish. So there's still fish. They're just a little, not as many numbers. They all tend to be in very How do you say? They're not everywhere. And once you find them, chances are the next time you float, if you remember where you found those fish in these lower sections, you'll find another one. So you really got to spend some time down there. The first time that you go down and float below Newcastle, the upper section fish is pretty hot. The fish seem to be everywhere. As you get to the lower section, they're not everywhere. So you really got to spend some time to find out where you can count on catching a fish. And the same goes below rifle or below silt. So silt to rifle, that's actually very technical as well. The more time you spend there and you learn where those fish are, you'll be able to dial it in. I'm kind of a numbers guy. I mean, as far not I don't say or a percentages guy. I like the percentages. So when I'm float fishing, especially with clients, I'll really say, hey, you can fish there, you fish there, but now be like, okay, yeah, get ready, get those flies right over on that bank right now, because 80% of the time you catch a fish there. And so getting those flies and remember those spots to get those fish or those flies into those pockets is super key. And that's really on the whole length of the Colorado River. So thinking about percentages, spending the time and getting out there and learning that water. Something I say in my presentations all the time is your best friend as a guide, as a fisherman, as a float fishing guide, as a float fishing angler, is basically your memory. So the memory of the river and remembering where you catch fish, and especially when you want to put numbers in the boat, or just even big, or it's just where fish like to live, really, to be honest. So something to remember is definitely just having a good memory of that river. The better memory you have of that river, the more times you get to float it, and the more time you see its little intricacies, the better you're going to fish on this river. I had a point here, what I was thinking about. Oh, yeah, and that said, sometimes there's a lot of boats on the water, and you're fishing, you want to fish what always is the best fishing run. Sometimes fishing that opposite side is nothing wrong, or whatever everybody else isn't fishing. One thing you will learn is that all of a sudden you'll find little pockets in that other side of the river, and you'll catch fish out of there. So it's good to also change it up and just see what you can find. That's one of the nice things about float fishing, is it's kind of always an adventure. And especially you get down into some of the lower Colorado where it starts braiding out and splitting. Super cool, because you can take other braid that you haven't been down, providing it has enough water. You don't want to get stuck in there. So just also make sure you're following enough water. If it starts going away, you might be pulling your boat over gravel bars. And of course, if you're doing that, you could also be trespassing. So really take that into account. But fishing those other channels is always kind of fun, and seeing where other fish live. So lots of fun in there. Any other questions, guys, in the meantime? And I don't know how it's going to work, but I do have my presentation. Let's see if this looks good at all. I'll bust into, it doesn't look great. There's a fish from last fall on Newcastle silt. So it kind of looks wonky, but there you go. So that's some good stuff from down low. Spring is really a great time to be getting out there, and really, we're just ending the month of March, and this is pretty early for even that upper stretches to be open. So definitely by all means get out there and check it out. Let's talk about some gear. A lot of people carry a boat bag, and I always think that I want one, but I end up always wanting to have the flies that I have. And so I wouldn't, if I have two different bags, it's always, throwing one into this one and into that one. And so this is a steamboat sling, the new Umpqua steamboat sling, super functional. I've had one before, and I just like the way that they carry enough gear. I can get lunch in there if you want. I've got a bunch of different fly boxes here. and I'll show you kind of what I carry. One thing I always like to carry is a lanyard when I'm float fishing, just because your hands aren't free as a guide too much. So you don't want to dig in your pockets for your nippers or your aquel. Definitely like the aquel for all my dry fly fishing. And then one other thing to really carry, and they don't make this anymore, but I still have the container, so I can just throw the dry shake in. It says Shimisaki's. This is the powder keg. So it's a big keg. And again, just easy for me to throw a dry fly in there. I can get in there quick, big chubby, shake it up, and it's good to go. As far as flies go, this is a good box. It's a lot of your good dry flies, and you can see I do like the chubbies, and I have a lot of good chubbies and some big ones. And last year, the orange or gold, I think they were calling it. That's a good pattern, good color. But by far, probably my favorite is a tan. And let's see if I got one here, like this guy right here. And a lot of, for me, why I like the tan, they say it's tan. It's got a little iridescent blue on the bottom, and it is tan, but it has that little iridescence on there. Is number one, I found that chubby actually it floats a little better. That actual dubbing tends to not get tore up by fish as much, and tends to float a little longer. Whereas even some of these golds, you might be able to tell. Let's see if I can find one, that it starts falling apart. That actual dubbing starts falling apart after a few fish. Let's see here. I got some questions here. That map, Todd, is a Mike Shook map there, and it's let's double check on there. And I believe this is an old one, but the Colorado River Windy Gap Reservoir to Rifle Fishing Map and Floaters Guide. So Mike Shook Book Publishing. I don't have any for retail right now in the shop, but I have of the Colorado River. But he makes them on the Arkansas. I have the Arkansas, the Roaring Fork, the South Platte. I mean, he's got a ton of different maps on there. And maybe call Denver and check and see if they have that. Yeah, and they got Trouts. I'm the guinea pig. Oh, nice, Ben. That was a fun day, Ben. Yeah, nice. Thanks for commenting. Let's see here. Yeah, definitely, Todd. I know, like I said, I'm out of stock of the Colorado here in Frisco, but Denver should check and see if they have them for sure. Definitely good resource, guys. The Roaring Fork, the Eagle, the Arkansas, South Platte, you name it. He's got them covered. So they're great little resources. So back to flies real quick. So chubbies, as you can see, are one of my favorites. Funny thing is these back in the day, I think this fly right here. This is what is this? A Chernobyl ant. But these ones with the little hackle under there, I've had those in my box probably for, I don't know, 15 years. And believe it or not, that used to be one of my favorite dry flies. And this thing would get eaten a lot. And of course, being that is mostly foam, this thing, I remember having some of these with just teeth marks on them. And it lasts forever, and fish just love to eat them. They sit a little less, they're a little less visible than the chubbies. So I think I end up kind of going with that chubby as opposed to a little moss on there. And then Parachute Madam X's, great little pattern here. And this is red and yellow, and this fly sits a little lower on the water there. And I always like to pull the legs sometimes too, those rubber legs, and basically I think it skates a little better with those rubber legs. And especially if you're finding the fish are going to be very selective, they seem like they're refusing that dry fly, pull those legs, see if they like it. These are pretty cool flies. This is my buddy Josh ties them. I don't even remember what he calls them, but again, very low profile. He's out of Idaho. If you ever want some flies, he does a bunch of custom tying, and it's Josh Jablow out of Driggs, Idaho. So props to Josh, and he ties some really unique patterns. He guides off the lodge at Palisade Creek, and these flies last fall were again sit really low in the water. I had some really big fish eat these dry flies. Again, not as visible, probably don't float for as long as a chubby, but super good. And so we'll go to the other side. Now we're going to go to the total opposite spectrum here. Let's see. We got some other places to wade. The Colorado, asking from out of state and only fished Colorado twice. Tons of places to wade. On that map from Windy Gap down to Pump House, there are some sections up by Partial, below the Williams Fork. Right now that upper Colorado above Partial, chances are that's still iced up, but below Williams Fork, that is the Williams Fork's a tailwater, so it's going to keep that water open. And there's a bunch of wades fishing right there. And then downstream, there's a couple more access points down to Kremling. There's Reeder Creek, Sunset Ranch, those are BLM accesses, but also a couple other accesses along the Colorado, which are Parks and Wildlife accesses. And then as you get into Pump House, you can wade fish Pump House, you can wade fish from Radium between and you get back on the River Road. There's quite a few more little access points along the road. Just make sure you're in public property. There's a lot of private property and mixed down there, but most of that property, it's either at a boat ramp or it is marked along the road there as BLM, entering BLM property or leaving BLM property. As you get down below Twin Bridges, not to be confused with Two Bridges, but that's farther down below Pinball, there's also a Red Dirt access, I think Red Dirt Creek access, and that's Eagle County open space. So a ton of good stuff out there. Let's see here. And then as you get to Dotsero, there's wade fishing there. And then even below Glenwood, there's accesses again at the boat ramps. And then there are some accesses off Frontage Road. And if you spend some time down there, you might even see some locals having pull-offs along the I-70. Not necessarily what I recommend parking on the I-70, but these actually pull-offs you get off of the interstate. What are our favorite stresses for mixing up boat and wade fishing? If you were talking folks that want to wade access more than just boat fishing. Most of the time because I usually don't step out and wade fish just because I feel like when I wade, if I'm doing that on a trip, I'm actually taking ability for spots for customers to fish later on. So I don't highly recommend those. And then Rancho to State Bridge has options as well. As you get down to State Bridge and to Two Bridges, you start running out of a ton of public property, but there is some, and that's actually really fun. There's a nice braided section that fishes well. And same with Two to Catamount. Again, mixture of private and public property. So just make sure you know where you're going to be. But there's wade fishing along there. And then really as you get downstream, it's the same kind of deal. It's just a mixture of wade fishing and or public property and private. Just make sure you're on public lands. And every section has easier wading sections, but it also has very difficult and technical. When you're on a river like the Colorado and it's a bigger river with lots of crazy rocks and whatnot, just use your common sense. Looking at the sections, you'll find that, ooh, that doesn't look wadeable, or the brush goes right to the river and there's no sandbar. So by all means, you'll have to kind of poke yourself or poke around and see what sections you like or what are easier to fish. One of the things with, big boulders and whatnot, you can step off a little hole and end up being in, up to your waist or up to your neck in water. So, check out sections and kind of use your best judgment. Best rig setup in Colorado in the summer for people new to fly fishing. What have you found is easy to bring in your clients to cast? Well, I for most beginners, I'm using a 9'5" weight flex rod a lot of times with my clients. Ross Evolution, and then a fairly short leader to about 2x or 3x tippet, and then in the summertime, I'm using a dry dropper rig, and so fishing one of those chubbies or dry flies, and that's a short leader, so about 6 or 7 feet to your dry fly, and again 2 or 3x, and then I like to use a longer dropper, so I'm going to be using about 3 foot of 3x tippet, fluorocarbon typically on there. On the leader, I'm going to be using regular mono. On that dropper, first dropper, I'm going to be using 3x fluorocarbon. And then typically I'll tie up, especially early summer, I'll tie up just a larger Pat's rubber leg, like a size 6 or 8. And then behind that, I'm going to, let's just say this is July, 1st of July, probably tie like a Prince nymph or a tungsten Prince and like a size 16 or a 14 or a UV Sally or something, flashy, kind of almost caddis emerger-esque behind that. And that's a really good go-to early season. And I say early season, I'm going to say like late June all the way through, late July. But that also said, as we're talking in May, we've got a good caddis hatch up on the Colorado, and that's a great technique. I wanted to actually throw the dry dropper last week, but we ended up not, and we were doing really well just nymph fishing. That said, that dry dropper fishing technique I use about year round, I'd probably say 80% of the time, and that's a real easy casting setup. And then you're just going to vary your flies. That Pat's, though, it gets everything down. So a lot of times we'll use that Pat's a good majority of the time of year until it gets clear and low when those fish get selective. And so when they get selective, then I might change to as a smaller stone fly, like a flashback tungstone, something like that, and then a smaller, maybe a zebra midge or a rainbow warrior behind that. But before they get super selective, again, that Pat's, and then just kind of varying that last fly, rainbow warrior, Prince nymph, flash Prince, UV Sally, and we can go into some of those as well. And when they do get selective, then I might start using that 4x fluorocarbon. So let's see, as Blue River Integrated Water Management Plan comments and participant. Let's see what we got here. Let's see, the Blue River Integrated Water Management Plan comments and participation. I know that's something definitely we're talking about up here, and I'm not who is at what's that, RS Trouts. I've definitely been talking with a few guys who are in our local TU chapter, as well as doing other work. Tanner, I can't remember his last name, but and then a few other fellows and folks talking about that Blue River Management Plan and what we're going to do with that Blue River to try to get back the water quality in there. So let's go back to some flies. Dinosaur lot is basically the essentially truck stop on the eastbound side of I-70 between South Canyon and Newcastle. And so essentially you have to access that eastbound. So you'd have to exit on Newcastle and then come back eastbound and drop your boat there. And then you can actually go back eastbound to like South Canyon and flip around and head down to Newcastle or Silt, wherever you're taking out. So, and it's, there's a bathroom there. It's not a great boat ramp. It's, it's basically, gravel and sand. But it's fine. And there's actually some great water just below there. Streamers, we got some streamer bug box here. Some of my favorites. This is a little pattern that I tie. It's just real sparse and easy. It's just a super simple fly. but that fly works good. I think I call it or a friend calls it the party bugger or something like that. These are kind of beat up. I think I whipped these together real fast. It's real easy to fish. With clients, I like easy casting bugs, just because streamer fishing is not easy for everybody. Little Kim, I believe that's actually something different. Might be. Little Kims are great. Those are easy casting as well. Baby Gongas. It's a little baby Gonga. One of my favorite flies last year. Actually, maybe it's a baby Gonga. It might be broken. One of my favorite flies last year was just the meat whistle. Got some somewhere in here. Yeah, here's some olive meat whistle. Actually, this olive meat whistle did really well last fall. Great pattern, casts really well. You can beat the crap out of that fly and it just stays alive. That's one of the favorite things about it. Just the straight up Peanut Envy. It's one of my favorites here. This is brown or tan. That is a great pattern. Oops. Let's see here. Again, easy casting. It's not super. It's a weird camera angle. Not super heavy, so it's super easy to cast. Let's see here. Trouts. Yvonne doesn't like olive. From what he told me though, that the olive meat whistle doesn't count. So that's not technically olive. That's what Yvonne said. So next time that Yvonne says that he doesn't like olive, and you say it's a meat whistle, I think you're okay. I have some, one of these circus peanuts. They're good. They're heavy. They're heavy and not for everybody to cast, especially a beginner. I think Yvonne's number 2 favorite fly is the olive Sculpzilla. That's a natural one. So I think I don't think I ruined him on that one there. So those are this is a Grandmaster Flash. This is actually a pretty fun fly to fish. Kind of a steelhead pattern. It can work for steelhead. The one thing is it's kind of nasty. You can definitely hook yourself pretty good. Let's see here. I don't, as far as streamer sink tip lines, I use a sinking leader, not necessarily a sink tip. I don't think, for me, my style of streamer fishing, that you need a full sink. They're tiring to cast, and they're very specialty directed. So once you have that sink tip, you're either changing out spools or that rod is dedicated. I carry a 6-weight in my boat at all times. It's my spare rod, and I'll have a sink leader on there. But if for some reason somebody breaks one of my 5-weights, I can pull that 6-weight out, put a regular leader on, and we can still fish a dry dropper. So it's not that big a deal. So I think having some of those RIA Versa leaders there are super key, and I sell them to tons of people. They're easy to cast. And, one thing I would say, they come with a very short section of mono under that tungsten, is maybe buy some tippet rings, use those tippet rings to tie on the end there, and then you can just add tippet to the end of there. So usually that's kind of my technique. You can get away without an actual sinking leader too, for sure. Good, we got maps there. Most effective way to pull the boat into the eddies and fish. When you're pulling into eddies, I like to make sure, for number one, I like to fish the top of the eddy as I go by. So if you pull into the eddy at the top, you just ruined an opportunity to catch a fish. So, I am being very conscious of being able to get my clients close enough to that eddy line to have them fish, but not too close to where I spook. And then we fish all the way to the bottom, and then I pull in it at the bottom. The other nice thing about pulling in the bottom, maybe you have enough water that there's a back eddy pushing, and then you can actually fish that back eddy along the bank. And then as you fish that back eddy, you start moving back to that middle and that current line. And, right there, if it's a good day, you maybe caught 3 fish already. So, something to be key on there. So it's all about taking your time and working in there, trying to find every potential fish. When I'm fishing, I can promise you that there's more often than not, I'd imagine some of my clients are like, man, he's always telling me there's try over there, try over here, try over there, because there's almost always a place to catch a fish. Crayfish patterns in the Colorado are great. That's one of the reasons why I like that. Shoot, I'm blowing the name there. Shoot, and this guy right here. So that's one of the I'm blanking right now. That's one of the reasons why I fish that pattern. They actually have a crayfish pattern in that, and a great little pattern. It floats. You can crawl it right on the bottom of the river there, and it's super good pattern for that. And definitely orange sometimes is a really good key. Olive seemed to be my favorite last year in the again, I'm blanking on the name right. And so, yes, definitely you fish some crayfish. Colorado Fly Guy has going, man. Do you know some good stocked river sections of fish close to Denver? There's tons of good fishing around Denver. And, I don't necessarily love stocked areas, rivers per se, just because I like wild trout. But, Decker's fish is good. Clear Creek fish is good. Yeah, there you go, Tim. Meat whistle. Thank you. The olive meat whistle. They have a crawfish pattern, black. Those are all good patterns in that meat whistle. It's one of my favorite casts really well as well. And again, you can beat the junk out of that fly. So back to the Colorado Fly Guy. Good stocked rivers. I don't necessarily like stocked fish per se. I would try to encourage, unless they're reproducing fish that can, for you not to stock fish that cannot reproduce. That's just my opinion, though, so I'm just going with that. But Deckers, 11 Mile Canyon, the South Platte, the Dream Stream up there, great fishing. Clear Creek has fish in it. Bear Creek has fish in it. A lot of those sections are opening up right now, so all super good stuff to fish. And I'll tell you what, a lot of small little creeks that if you just peek on a map and start doing some research, and if there's a road driving along it, it's a great little area to go check out and see if you can find some trout in there. And chances are, hopefully, again, not doing any trespassing, but hopefully you'll find some nice trout. Back to another box. This is kind of my steelhead box, but I still carry it in my bag for trout. Number one, some of these steelhead flies, when I first started swinging flies, caught fish down in Colorado at Dot Zero. So it's a good, couple good patterns you can use as a streamer, and those will catch fish, even if you're out of the certain streamers, and that might fall into that. Tippet rings, got some tippet rings here. Those are definitely in my box there. Beads. We got pink, chartreuse. I usually have a little more of a yellow color instead of that chartreuse. And then, so that's definitely carried in there just for the beads a lot of times and those tippet rings. But again, sometimes, that thing right there would probably catch fish on the Colorado. I mean, I think any of these steelhead flies would catch fish. Then we'll go into my bread and butter, and we're going to talk about the nymphs. I like these little divider boxes. They're cheap, but You know, I can see everything that I have and add them. So, you know, the divider box here, we got your Pat's rubber legs in a couple different colors. This is the color that was working for me last week. So kind of a, you know, tannish color. I think these have maybe gotten wet and they're kind of looking more orange, but that was catching fish. We caught fish on the chocolate. Probably my all-time favorite color though is that mocha chocolate or whatever they call that, coffee. That's a good one right there as well. And then a favorite that I picked up last year too is, and this is Umpqua Flies here. This is like an orange with crystal flash in there, and that's a super good pattern as well. And again, you know, not super huge. I got a few big ones in there, but not super small. That said, now as we get into the later season, then I start going into some of these small sizes. I think this is a 12 in that chocolate, and that's also a great pattern. For a good heavy sinking alternative is the tungsten flashback tungstone, and this is a great pattern. Nice little flashback, definitely for those clearer days, brighter days. It's actually fairly heavy. I think that's a 12 or a 10, or that's a 12 actually, but I've probably got some 10s in here. So that'll definitely sink quite a bit faster. I think this is a big 10. And just seems to be a fly that I just have a lot of confidence in when it's maybe not happening as much, or or they're getting a little more picky. Prince nymphs, we talked about princes. This was become some of my favorites. This is a flashback, tungsten flashback prince. That's actually a really cool pattern. Definitely try those out. And then just straight up tungsten. Usually the prince nymphs, I'll carry them in my box from like size 10s to 16s. Not much smaller than that, and not much bigger than that. Springtime, I might tie some princes that are big, just because that white wing really adds some flash to it. And so a lot of times I'll use those as a, you know, tie them really big, like a Pat's rubber leg size, and use those as your first fly. Rob G, I've been rolling the color for a bit. And I haven't run the needle, so been rolling for a bit, but haven't run the needle. So the needle is very easy compared to rodeo or pinball. You know, it's maybe, I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot more going on in rodeo and pinball. Definitely start with pinball. You can see everything from the road. You can do that as well with rodeo. But I would give it some time on both those rapids. Pinball, you really just have to pull. You kind of just stay river right to start. That's where all the water is. And then in the apex of the turn above the bridge, a good, I don't know, you're probably 40 yards above the bridge. You got to start ferrying. You got to go around a rock. And once you go around that rock, then you start ferrying back to the left to get on the other side of the bridge piling on the left side. Last year at high water, I was able to run right. Never had run it. I just had heard you can run it that way, and I did that, and it's really fun. And it actually puts you in a really good spot to catch a few fish. But you know, it's a pretty aggressive because of the fact that all the water is pushing you to that bridge piling, and if you mess up, that could be your boat stuck against there. So I definitely would say, you know, make sure, if I was you, make sure you can run the needle very confidently, and then and the Yarmany very confidently at like high water and low water. And then once you feel like you can pick your way through Yarmany at low water, I like to, if you can pick your way through Yarmany at low water after the big rock and go way right and move through all those rocks, then I think you're going to be fine for starting to do pinball. And then as you get comfortable with pinball and all its potentials, the other thing about pinball is pinball's its own little bad rapid, but down below that at Twin Bridges, not to be confused with Two Bridges, that rapid, since they put the two new bridges in there, is actually more technical challenging than it used to be, but it's also quite technical in the fact that you've got to move through all these rocks and boulders. That one, if I would, and I recommend going river right, used to go river left, but now it pushes you right into a bunch of rocks and a piling, and it's not enough water to like pin you on the piling, at least at lower levels, but you'll be banging your way through those rocks in there. So you go river right, but after that, you still got to pick your way through all these little boulders and stuff. And then once you get comfortable with that, then you can start looking at rodeo and deciding if it's something you want to take. I highly recommend doing rodeo for your first time, though, in a raft, just because you can start learning, it's what it's got in it and what it can do to you, because it's got some serious stuff where you can definitely break your boat, sink your boat, flip your boat, all kinds of nasty stuff. So back to some flies here. I got some mini leeches here. Somehow they're hidden in this box. They're not supposed to be there, so I'm going to take those out and get those in the right spot. Definitely love the little mini leech to trail behind other streamers. Definitely, this time of year too, you could use it as a, maybe below that patch rubber leg. That's a good little second attractor. I think this is just, we got some worms in here, also a second attractor. This is where you get the dirty part of this box, but just a squirmy worm. I don't have a ton of worms. In fact, a lot of times I just, if I'm going to fish a worm, I just peg a piece of chenille and then put a hook below it. So, yeah, you bet, Rob. Yeah, and I think that's the thing with Yarmany is it's a lot longer and it's got a lot more to like pin or eye of the needle. Pretty much has the one move. The one thing in needle too is, if you go right, you really don't have any time to stop or slow down and look at it. One thing to think about too on the eye of the needle, even though it might be, I don't even think it's more technical. It's just that you have to tuck your oars, is check out left, because there's a nice eddy right above it on river left, and you can stop and look at it, and you go in it really slow. The other nice thing about going river left is there's a chance to catch some fish in there. And so, check that out, because you can actually catch fish, look at it, and then go in very slow, do the drop, and it's not bad. It's a really nice drop on the river left. Another pattern I like to fish down in the Colorado, believe it or not, is just straight Coronacones. Big larva, especially this time of year. In fact, last year in the competition that we do down there on the lower Colorado, I think our biggest fish of the day, I think it was a 19-incher, 20-incher, came on a big Coronacone. Something like this is a red one. So red or black, believe it or not, do really well down there. Here's kind of a black one. And for some reason or another, they like to eat them. And especially even in the middle of winter, I do a lot of fishing with those. So those are some of my favorites. Dirty Bird Caddis, that's a great one for late June or May, or any soft hackles. I've got some like soft tackle pheasant tails. Let's see if we can get the Dirty Bird out of here. I think these ones got beat up last year. Good heavy tungsten fly, and has a nice little wing on it. Also one of my favorite little early season caddis emergers. Real buggy looking. That Dirty Bird is a really good one, and kind of can be like that print sniff. And then hot belly pheasant tail, also a really good pattern. In the green, I think we talk about this fly a lot. Only bummer that I find is that it's not tungsten and it falls apart a little bit. Solitude does tie a pattern that is very similar. It's called the El Diablo. It is actually tied in tungsten and fishes really well. So highly, you might want to look into that. And it's basically the same thing. Super good pattern. And then straight up zebra midges. One thing too, we talked about, this is a fairly small one. This black zebra midge, great pattern. And then I tie those zebra midges in up to like size 12 for myself, just because I feel like they work a little better, and they're heavy and they sink real. It's a really good pattern for using later in the fall as maybe your first fly, especially if the fish are really selective, using some 5X fluoro off your chubby to that, and then a small little beta snip, so something good. One of my couple of my favorite flies too that I like to use. Well, there's like 3 of them right here. Let's see if we got it. We can show them to you. Let's see here. That's not working real well. Try to figure where the camera is. Okay, can't see them all there, but tan KGB, and that comes in like a 14 or a 16. This fly sinks like a rock. Super good pattern, and I'll use that in both sizes. And looks like a Sally, it looks like a PMD, looks like a lot of different things. UV Sally, Umpqua fly as well. That first one was too. Leggy, got that blue, tan, UV underbody. This fly also does really well. And then a tungsten, rubber leg, tungsten Sally. Heavy, sinks. This is a good pattern. It's also tied in quite larger sizes, I think up to like 12. Also a really good pattern that I like to use. If anybody has ever followed my fishing or my things, I like to use Rainbow Warriors. And I'll use these all the way up to a size 14, extra heavy. Probably one of my favorite flies. If I could buy them in a size 12, I probably would. So I guess I need to tie them. And then lately, one of my patterns that I love to fish, these are actually got a couple different patterns in here. Radiation Betas, great little pattern. Just a little, almost like a pheasant tail. Curved hook, though, is real nice. And then lately, this is kind of one of my favorites, is the KGB. Same as that other KGB, but this is the black and blue version, and you can see that nice blue flashback on there. And I think the fish, in the fall, they think it's like a trico. This time of year, maybe a midge, or a mayfly. Lot of different things they're thinking it is. And then this fly actually was catching some fish last year. So Radiation Betas in pink. That one actually was good. I only have a couple left in there. That's kind of a cool pattern as well. So those are kind of some of my Betas patterns. Shot glass Betas is another one that I do carry fish, but that's a lot of times in my next little midge packs. Nice, look at Trouts. They're helping everybody out. This is awesome. All right, so let's see here. Midge box. Small box. We'll start with dry flies because, this thing is actually not very loaded right now, but it's just kind of starting on there. I did just drop a little high vis Griffith's Gnat. There's a great little midge dry. Some of my favorites there are the sprout midge patterns. Those are great patterns. You can see some Charlie's Myces there. That's a great for the Blue River. Little beta submerger right there. I forget what that fly is called. Some crystal RS2s, I believe those are, or I can't remember those are. And then just straight little bluing olive patterns. Little Lawson's Thorax, CDC Beta's done. Those are a great fly. And then just parachute Adams. A lot of times, because I'm float fishing a lot, parachute Adams and the visibility is used a lot. And if I'm fishing double dries, I got some big parachute Adams, like size 12, and then some smaller ones too. Most everybody, even if it's a big fly from the boat or from in your hand, a lot of times it looks about 10 times smaller on the water. At least it seems that way. So having big flies and visible flies is super key for float fishing. And then we can get into some of the small midges and all kinds of little different colors. You can see, oh, that's a new pink Rainbow Warrior. I think the boys from Umpqua gave that to me the other day. That's super cool. Last week, those mighty midges were working really well in the blue, or I think that's the blue or the red. Those were working well in the lower Colorado for me. And then this little guy, I always forget that's name. It's almost like the Solitude Cardinal midge. Yvonne, you might be able to help me out. You guys have it in the shop. We don't have it up here in Summit, but it is a great pattern. It's basically just pearlescent wrapped around the hook. And then what is that? The Demon Midge. That Demon Midge is one of my favorites there. And then straight up, like just straight Miracles and Black Beauties. Those are good patterns in there. Foam Wings this time of year can be really good. Again, smaller shot glass Baetis or radiation Baetis. A couple different things there. Sometimes, although I bought a bunch of them, they must have been working real well. The Mercury Baetis, those are a good pattern. Bling Midges. Again, these are not necessarily a great float fishing, but sometimes you'll find that you have to use them, especially like last week, they were really keen on midges, and so those mighty midges were doing really well. And then Desert Storm I like to use, and actually these little red guys last week were doing really well. Also on the Colorado Brassy, just a red Brassy was doing really well. For some reason or another last week, red was kind of fishing red behind the other flies was super key. So those are kind of the flies there, guys, that I like to use, and I'll deviate a little bit through the seasons and maybe add some, whether it's just something I see in the shop. I don't know. I guess I'm probably as bad as a fish because a lot of times I'm looking at the flies and seeing what I like, and then going and then being like, let me try that. That looks really cool. And then if it works out, then all of a sudden I got a new favorite. As far as tippet goes down there, guys, couple little mixture, 0X. I'll even carry some like 20-pound for streamers and 0X or building leaders. So do that. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And really, 1 is not necessarily even needed. I could probably do without it, but it's nice to have sometimes depending on how you're building leaders, because I'm doing a lot of building leaders. That 2X, 0, 1, and 2 they're all going to be pretty much monofilament. I will carry fluoro in my bag, but it's basically only if I'm I'm fishing streamers and I feel like the fish need to be fooled for some reason or another. But those heavier lines are always going to be pretty much mono. As we get down into 3X and 4X, now I'm going to be changing that to fluorocarbon. Same with 5 and 6X. Now these are all tippets ready at the hand. So this is mostly for float fishing and or this time of year. If I'm fishing the Dream Stream or fishing somewhere where there's selective trout, I'm going to definitely have some monofilament for dry fly fishing. So I'll have that in also 3, 4, and 5, and maybe even 6X in straight monofilament, just because it's not going to sink like that fluorocarbon, and you'll be able to fish dry flies on it. So we talked about lanyards. We talked about all that good stuff. Always in your in your bag. You want some, well, float fishing sunblock. You know, this is good stuff right here. Surface. We know we carry it up in Frisco. I'm sure the boys are probably thinking about it down in Denver. Good, super good stuff. Let's see here. You know, took out some guys last week. They didn't like the thingamabobbers. I do have yarn. We fished some yarn too, but thingamabobbers for sure. You want those, especially nymphing. Again, but 90% of the time I'm fishing a dry dropper. Oh yeah, talked about this, just the chenille. That's kind of dirty, but you know, just doing that chenille. Sometimes I don't want to tie a worm, and I don't want to buy a worm. So there's your yarn indicator. That stuff works really well as well. Floats really well. And I know I had some leader in here. Extra floatant. That's one thing to always carry in your bag is extra floatant. So a bunch of different leaders, 3-packs. You know, most of the time, 5X, 4X leaders are kind of standard. Here's some of the VersaLeader stuff. Always carrying those VersaLeaders in your pack. This is fluorocarbon leader. This would be really only for either lake fishing for me or streamer fishing. So a bunch of different stuff. We got Rio and Absolute or Umpqua leaders there. Here's a beat up leader. That's just the pack. I think it's good to go. Split shot. You know, one thing, nymphing this time of year. If you're nymphing, guys and gals, use. I like to use a patch rubber leg in the middle of winter though. So extra floatant, a couple of those just in case. In middle winter time, you're going to want to use a lot of times split shot. You're just going to get down to those fish a little faster. So having a good little selection of split shot. Looks like mine emptied in my bag, so that's always fun. Don't have to clean that up. So a couple different things with split shot. Some hooks for pegging. Always come in handy. But yeah, having that extra split shot so you can actually fish your nymphs in the middle of winter with actually being it'll just sink a lot faster than that patch rubber leg. That said, I catch fish all winter long on that patch rubber leg, and I'll kind of rotate it through there. Rob G. Yeah, you bet, man. You bet. You're welcome on that. Let me say, here's another little thing. I like the hemos to be easy to find, easy to catch. These loon hemos with the clip, I found these when I was guiding briefly down in Florida. I would use these and a different pair of pliers, but I have these because they're super light and you can carry them everywhere. Super easy. Sometimes they'll be around my neck, but they'll cause issues there sometimes, so they're easy to clip to the bag. But one thing is be careful. You can unclip these and then all of a sudden lose a $20 pair of hemos. So something to think about. Trying to think if I got anything else in here. Specifics, guys. Anybody got any more questions specifically on float fishing and or all of that good stuff? It looks like we're kind of at 1 o'clock. Got through all this stuff. How many we got? We got some people here. 27. Hey, thanks for coming out. And I'm here for a little bit longer, so ask me some questions. You bet, yeah, you bet, Ryan. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. Please shoot them at me, man. I'm here. I'm just like you guys. I don't have as much as I normally have to do. So I got time to talk stories, and by all means, call me at the shop, 970-668-2583. That goes to my cell phone. Try not to call that too late. But you can give me a call or shoot me a email, Zeke, Zeke, at Trouts, and that's TROUTS.com or troutsflyfishing.com. Either one of those will get to me. So shoot me some emails. Go to troutsflyfishing.com as well, to the website. Shoot us all kinds of questions, and we'd love to get you out there. By all means, we're still trying to offer guided trips during these times. But if at the very least you can go out and do some fishing. Hey Tom, good to see you, man. And let's definitely get out again with you soon. That was an awesome trip last fall with you and your family. I really always have a great time with you, man. Every time, even in Florida. Tom and I had some really amazing times in Florida, fishing this Estero Bay and stuff, and we got to see some really cool fish in these back eddies. Caught some fish, almost like river fishing here, and actually we're in my drift boat fishing a moving tidal current and fishing snook, catching snook off the mangroves, and then running into some permit in this backwater. So it's kind of crazy. Henry Myers, what advice do you have for rowers to help get friends on fish when floating the river? I think the biggest thing that I think people don't realize is they're a lot of times going too fast. So the more you can slow down, the better. Now that said, if you're not moving at all, that's when you also have to kind of keep moving. So there's times when that wind completely stalls you out, and you got to kind of keep pushing through to move your way down the river. But for the most part, when I'm teaching my guide academy, and or even fishing with other guys who are aspiring guides and or friends, I'm usually telling them to slow down. Like, hey, you need to slow it down, and or maybe get a little closer to the bank or pick a bank. Sometimes, you're not sure. You're like, I don't know, that one looks good, this one looks good. So, but maybe pick one over the other and get a little stuff closer to that bank. Not too close, but just close enough so it's easy. So, all right, Dave. Hey, man, Dave Lovell. What's up, buddy? I'd imagine that's Dave Lovell. Thanks for saying hi, brother. Let's see here. If you run into a hole or two and don't hook up, change flies. If you're able to back row the same hole. Rob, one thing I would say is most people change too much. And so, because there's multiple times that I've told my friends that this is what I use, and you can see that in my fly box, I didn't have a ton of different flies. So if I think, if I give a shot at it, and let's say, for instance, last week, I had two anglers, so I was able to kind of mix it up out of the boat right away. And I am using those, and I'm testing multiple holes. And I'm not going to do just one or two. It'll probably be three. It'll probably be more like a half hour or 45 minutes. And that said, even in the morning, because everything's kind of slow, I'll give it a good amount of time. And then if somebody catches a fish, I'll take note of that. And then if I know we're on fish and one of them catches, is the same guy's catching fish, then I'll maybe change flies. So that's the nice thing about having two people. If it's just one person, then you might have to change flies a little bit more. But even then, don't be spending so much time changing flies. Really try to, have your setup, like your bag, the ones that I have in my bag, and try to really stick with them. At least two of them. So if you're fishing a chubby dropper, try not to change that patch. Maybe just change that very, very end fly. Or if you're nymphing, you can maybe change two, but you're spending time, tying flies on. And again, then, maybe you change the fly, give it a little time, and you're still not hooking up. Then maybe now you change two flies. So now, because you're still not hooking up, now you change that, keep that patch on. But now maybe you take the egg. Let's say you're fishing egg, man, they're not on the egg, so it's scaring them. And then maybe you change up to a UV Sally and a Rainbow Warrior. And if that's still not working, then maybe you change that Rainbow Warrior to a midge, and then kind of see but try not to spend so much time, cutting and not trusting those flies. I really am in the belief that if you get a good drift and you get those flies down to those fish, you're still going to catch fish. Even my friends last week that I was out floating, they were downsized and using 5 and 4X fluorocarbon. I use 3X all the day, and we outfished them like 3 or 4 to 1. So, and I was using, they were like, wow, you're using that big of flies. And I was just making sure my clients were getting down and really causing good drifts. And the other thing too is getting that heavier fly and getting down is going to help you get a better drift. So if you're getting those flies down, there are actually down where those fish are, and everything will slow down under that indicator or that dry fly. If it's super light and the current's catching your dry fly or indicator and they're light and you're not getting those flies down, then they're hanging back up. So, that's what I would recommend, is try not to change a ton. Find your handful of flies that you really have confidence in and just make sure everybody's getting those flies down. And then, especially hopefully you have 2 people in your boat and you can do a little, experimenting. I think that's super key, is having a couple people in the boat experiment. I think last week I knew right away Dad was catching fish on the black and blue KGB. So I knew to stay. That was a good one. I gave it a little time. The son caught a fish on one of the flat patterns, but he just wasn't catching, hooking up as much. So then I switched him to KGB. Now they were both hooking up, but I was like, man, they need a little more. And I think we can get more. And then I tried the Dad with another midge, and then immediately he was hooking up. And so I was like, midge. And then we put that combination and the Pats, the black and blue KGB and the midge, and then they were hooking up on all 3 flies. But I was able to, get through that by changing one person at one time and then seeing how that did, etc. Any more questions, guys? A lot of talking here. Gotta drink that water. Gotta stay hydrated, stay healthy. All righty, guys. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming here. I don't know if I have a ton more to talk about unless you guys ask me. Come see us. Again, troutsflyfishing.com, Zeke at troutsflyfishing.com, or Zeke at Trouts, and that's Zeke. And that's my email. You can check us out on Instagram. I'm Zeke Hersh on Instagram. I don't do a ton of posting, but I am out there. You bet, Ben. Thank you. Give me a call at the Frisco shop, 970-668-2583. That'll go right to me. Call the shop in Denver, 303-733-1434. Let's see. Anything else, y'all? All right, man. Well, stay safe, stay healthy out there. Getting outside is key. Just, keep your distance from everybody. Try not to touch a ton of people. Wash your hands. Let's stay healthy. Let's get through this. Let's get back open. Let's get healthy. Let's get everybody back on the water, back in business, making money. Not that that's the number one thing, but, we all got to survive. So, and let's try to do that as well as we can in a healthy, safe manner and responsible manner. And love y'all. Thanks for coming. Ryan Walker, thank you. Be safe as well. And I really appreciate this time with you guys, and hit me up anytime. Henry, you bet, man. Thank you. Great stuff. I'm glad you liked it. And you bet, man. And we're going to do more of these guys throughout the season. This was our first little attempt, second attempt with this. So plan on more. I'll hopefully have some more to talk about, and we'll do some stuff like this. I don't know. We'll maybe, I know Yvonne and I are going to be talking about all kinds of options to do education wise. So, and if you guys have any ideas, hit them up in the comments here or on Instagram, or send me an email, or send Yvonne an email, or any of us at the Trouts team. Send us an email or a live chat. We want to help you out. We want to get you on the water. We want to get you outside, and and by all means, we want to keep you all safe too. And again, thanks for everything, and we'll talk to you again soon.